A little while ago, I finally got the iPhone 4, and so I was playing with Siri, and you know, the Siri interface leaves a lot to be desired. It's very cool for very simple tasks, but you know, I asked it a question, and it just totally didn't get me several times. I was trying to get it actually to call Shakey's Pizza, or not Shakey's, Yellow Cab, and so when I paused as I addressed Siri, I said Siri, and then it immediately assumes that I'm done, and I was just gathering my thoughts, and then I said something else, and it came back with a crazy answer, and so it brought to mind this kind of you know, it was voice interface fail, right? So it kind of brought to mind a movie, and I just wanted to bring up a clip that I had on my hard drive of a 2006 movie you may have seen called Idiocracy. Has anybody seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it.
All right. Just a wee bit of background. Our protagonist hero here is on his way to prison for the crime of not having a tattoo. This is 500 years in the future when things are not more advanced, but rather everybody is just dumber. And stuff just doesn't work.
What are we doing here?
Okay, sir, we're engaged in procuring your tattoo.
Welcome to the Identity Processing Program of America. Please insert your forearm into the forearm receptacle. Thank you. Please speak your name as it appears on your current federal identity card. Document number G24L8.
Well, I'm not sure if...
You have entered the name Not Sure. Is this correct? Not Sure.
No, it's not correct.
Thank you. Not is correct. Sure. Correct?
No, it's not. My name is
Already
Joe.
confirmed. Your first name is Not. Please confirm your last name. Sure.
My last name is not sure.
Thank you.
It's Joe.
Is complete. Please wait while I tattoo your new identity on your arm.
Wait a second. Can we start over? Can I cancel this? Can we cancel this and just go back to the beginning? They're going to Ow! Can I speak to your supervisor?
Please hold still for your photograph.
That's fucking great.
Okay, sir, now we will...
Can we
just watch that?
You can watch him another minute. It's quite a funny movie.
Again, to proceed to obtain your IQ and aptitude tests.
What for?
Okay, sir, this is to figure out what your aptitude's good at and get you a jail job while you're being a particular individual in jail.
If you have one bucket that holds 2 gallons and another bucket that holds 5
It turns out he was...
how many buckets do you have?
2?
Thank you. Lord, I'm tired all the time.
Turns out he's the smartest guy in the world. Anyway, with that, I'll turn it over to Eumir, who has an interesting presentation.
Don't overhype it.
Just to give you
raise our expectations.
A little background, I sent an email to the list about some JavaScript stuff earlier this week, and we've been playing around, taking a little time to learn Backbone JS and experiment with some JavaScript MVC stuff, and we did that in the context of an application which is already an open source app. We just decided to make some contributions to it, see if we could implement some features, and that's what Eumir is going to talk about.
Cool. So,
Picturean kita, Eumir. Di na.
Ooh.
PowerPoint presentation. Oh yeah.
So first, just a little background of why we came to that endeavor. So before we used our JS prototype with jQuery for Rails, but after a while, a lot of client-side MVC frameworks appeared, like Backbone, Ember, and Batman, Spine, and we were curious why client-side MVC became the in thing right now. So with that, before managing JS within Rails apps, we're using like RJS. We inserted the code in controllers or views. So with that, this one just chose the highlight. And in jQuery, we just included a JS file, and there, so easy. The problem is when our apps became bigger, managing the files became harder. Like, for example, one of our legacy or current apps uses two huge ass JS files called init and common. I think it's up to 500 lines.
Yeah.
It's
Per file.
Crying out for structure. 500 lines? That's not huge. All of it.
So basically, if we encounter a bug in the JavaScript, it's either you search for the class of the element that had the bug, or well, you turn to someone who knows the code inside out, like me and Rad, and then ask where the code can be found. So one of the solutions was to create JS objects that will be initialized when needed, or different files, like separate files for each page. Like, let's say you only have JavaScript for registration, for the main app, etc. I'll give you an example of that. So this one just creates an object, like, and then append registration, then search, and then you either call it only on registration pages like this, or you can just call everything, call all the inits in your application layout. But that makes your code a bit more manageable since you can just search the namespace. So that's where client-side MVC comes in, and so we went diving into Backbone and Rails. So good marinos tayo. We forked Fulcrum. Fulcrum is an open source pivotal clone, and it's still not as good as Pivotal, but it's almost as good. So it's still lacking some features like the one we did, which I'll be going into next. So yeah, Fulcrum uses Jasmine for testing, sign-on for mocking in JS, and Backbone and underscore for. It also uses jQuery. So one of the new features that was in the issue list was a user should be able to set specific velocity in order to replan the backlog.
Is everyone here a user of Pivotal Tracker, or have you seen it before?
Yeah, do you need an example?
Yeah.
Well, I'll show you now. Pivotal already does this. So you can adjust the velocity to replan your backlog. So let's say if your team if you're planning to lessen the velocity for a certain week, for an upcoming week, we can just switch the velocity. Fulcrum doesn't have this yet, so that's the plan. We added the override view. We just need to add an override view, the functionality for overriding the velocity, and then we render everything so the stories will show up in the backlog. So I think we have an example of that. We have a
CC?
2
Did you push a new code through?
Oh no, we have the
Local host? You have a local
oh
version?
yeah, I can have a local version. So this one's a bit empty yet. I think it will be flat test. This one. You can show this?
Yeah.
So
The first thing we did is write an importer so that I could import a large project we have in Pivotal, so we could actually see it with real data in a realistic scenario. So this is a real project that we had in Pivotal, sort of snapshotted from a week ago.
Could anyone see the?
Yeah.
I think
Sort of.
yeah, it's 14. This one is 14. So basically, we can just edit the. Since this one is the original, the Fulcrum clone, so it doesn't have our changes yet. So in Pivotal, you can click velocity and change it. So this is what we did. You can click simple one for now, then just like say 3 or something, and then it renders this thing pretty fast. So basically, that's what we did. So, well, I won't delve much into explaining how we did it and what Backbone does, but well, we can show that.
Wow. So the commit.
We can show the code. So Backbone puts the JS files here, and you can see that there are models and views. So let's see. We added the code in the project view. This was newly refactored by the author, so it was in application view before, and he just transferred all his code into project view, and then the models. Here, he transferred the code in iteration and project because he didn't feel that it was MVC before. So basically, this is what we did to render the backlog. So that means when the user velocity attribute of the project changes, it will call the add all function.
This model in the project view is a project model.
This model means project. When you instantiate project, you say that model is a project. Something like this one. Instead of this model, you just say this project. So we add all. So we added a loading screen because before it didn't have one. And it just renders everything. So back to our one of our observations were some tests weren't good in the sense that they weren't testing what they should have been testing. Like some tests were just testing if an element had a class instead of if it got the class because of some functionality. And one of our discoveries was that when in this bound attribute, let's see, oops, this one here in project. So we set when we call the velocity function, we set the velocity is fake because it's part of the feature. The feature asks for showing that the velocity is fake to the user, so he knows that.
For those who don't know, the velocity is usually a calculation and average of the last 3 iterations. So what we're doing is overriding that calculation and specifying the velocity.
What we first did before was to bind the, well, it was accidental, but we bound the what do you call this? The render to velocity is fake. So when velocity is fake changes, we rendered the page. What we didn't know about Backbone that time was as soon as velocity is fake changed, it rendered the page. So it still didn't have a user velocity. So we didn't see the changes. We accidentally found out about it when we tried binding the render to user velocity, since now that when user velocity changes, apparently velocity is fake is already true, so it gets here and shows the fake velocity. There, Jasmine is blazing fast. It's the first time I used Jasmine, well, last Monday.
This is a testing.
Yeah, Jasmine is a JS testing framework. In Chrome, it runs in less than a second. In Firefox, it's at least 1.1 seconds.
Chrome tests.
192 specs. So, well, since some tests aren't that good, so we are not sure if that's a real benchmark for Jasmine.
Just a question here, like,
Okay.
in the Jasmine tests, how do you use the fixtures? Like, do you use like a before each and like load some HTML every time before the test, or
the way the author did the tests was he separated the. sorry. The way the author did the test was he separated the functionality per view and per model. So he basically just created a model. Let's say in views here. Let's look at the big view here. So he has a before each, and when he tests the story, he just mocks all the other things required for the story. I haven't finished diving into the other tests yet, so I think that's what he was intending, because he says that it's still a work in progress. He's still refactoring the tests right now.
In fact, there's one sort of mistake not optimal or quite correct thing that I put in there, where you see where the comment says not dry. I sort of had a question about how he was mocking these objects, and I ended up copying an entire method from the model class into here and thinking, I needed that for the test. I asked the author what his suggestion was, and he said, well, you should just return a string instead of implementing the actual date formatting there, and use that particular date in your test.
like I've kind of used Jasmine for quite some time, and the thing I felt was like, so the way I do it is like, I haven't used Backbone much, but standalone JS stuff. in that I generally create a fixture and like load the HTML. And if we are doing something sort of like something like a unit test with Jasmine, then I just mock out the other stuff with, you can mock things in Jasmine. I can like just use some sort of spy to.
Yeah, that's what he
Sign on.
Sign on. He was using.
But that's what I was like kind of asking, like because I was loading the fixture every time in the before each block. It's kind of not that fast.
Because are you loading a lot of fixtures? Or?
It's like if your JS file grows really big, like as these guys talked about it, like 500 lines, then you need a real page to test stuff. So like that makes more sense to me. I don't know. So that's what I was kind of asking. Like, well.
In the MVC framework, what happens is the views become just the view is an element. It gets its own DOM element. So if you're manipulating the view for a model and your tests are only concerning that view, theoretically you don't need the whole page. So
I guess the MVC like it drives things up a lot. Then like it makes your test faster as well, right?
Probably. I think it leads to better factoring of that.
So we have a good structure in our JS folder, so it's separated now. We can look into the models, collections, views, and integrating with HTML is better because before I had like long jQuery functions that appended huge HTML strings. so now we use jQuery and underscore for templating. I think he is still working on it, and I think it needs some refactoring because he's putting some of his templates in the views, and it looks a bit spaghetti-like right now. So his templates are not that stories. Yeah, he uses a lot of this in the views.
It's the first time I'd ever seen that, so maybe you want to explain what that is.
I think what he does here is just declares the templates in the HTML.
Pretty much like ERB.
Yeah.
Except that like the placeholders
are script tags, so it won't be rendered until you call the template.
So you just reference this template by ID, and then you have access to the body of the or the template or templating engine has access to the body of it.
Yeah. But the way he organizes it is he just adds all the templates in that page, and I think
it's not terrible, but
it's not bad. I think it's fine.
Well, yeah. Well, I think one way you could do it is to create partials for each template and just include the partials there. So we can find the node template easily instead of searching for node in projects. If this grows into a large page, then you'll have to search for the node. Anyways, so yeah, that's just the start. Since we've only been working with Fulcrum since Monday, so we still haven't explored all the nooks and crannies.
Well, the author's asking for the pull request, so that's a good sign.
You can push it already.
He rejected my first bug fix. I'll forgive him if he takes our feature.
I have to ask, what's the story with the file name?
The what?
The file name. The scandal.
watching out for one of his employees.
Oh yeah.
All right.
More food.
You didn't do a background check.
That was it. That was it. That's all in the text.
It's all, that was the presentation.